Welcome to the Recovering Preacher's Kids, a space for healing, honesty, and leaving a legacy of faith without perfection. We're your hosts, Lisa and Lori, and we're so glad you're here.
So I have a loaded question for you today.
Okay.
And my question is, have you ever felt or have you ever gone through a season where you feel like you are doing absolutely everything right, but you're just stuck? Like you're not going anywhere.
I feel like that's the story of my everyday life, to be honest with you.
Mine too.
I
Yeah.
feel like I'm following all the rules. I'm doing everything like I'm supposed to do. And it's just like nothing's changing. Same spot as I always been.
Have you ever seen the movie 50 First Dates with Drew
Yes.
Barrymore? And sometimes I feel like I'm living that because it's like I feel like I go through the day and I do the same things that I did the day before, and I pray and I read my Bible, or, I would like to say I don't speed, but let's be real, I speed everywhere I go. So that's off the table. That's a sin I'm gonna have to work on. But it's like, but then it's like I go to bed and then I wake up the next day and it's the exact same day over and over. And it's like I grow weary in the being stuck. I grow weary in why am I continuing to pray for something? I get frustrated. Okay, you're going to laugh when I say this. I get so frustrated of doing what I feel like is everything right, but nothing changes.
I'm not going to laugh at that because I totally get it.
But why do I want to turn around and do something that's not right? I'm like, you know what? Doing everything right is not working for me. I'm just going to do something different.
Then maybe, okay, well, let me ask you this, because this is what's been going on in my mind is like, what are we judging on what is right? What standard am I using on what is considered right? Am I using what culture says and what everybody else is saying is going on? Like, for example, you made the statement that, don't get me wrong, we need to read our Bible, and we need to pray. I'm not saying that, but is that something that we're saying in our church culture that has to be done to be right? You know what I'm saying? So what standards? So I don't know. It got me thinking, and it's like, well, okay, well, how do I know what is truly right? What God says is right.
Right. Well, and I guess part of my frustration is I feel like if I'm doing all these things I think are right, I want to see the results from it.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I
on
know
the back.
Right, and I'm a checklist person. To
me
be
too.
as disorganized as I am, I'm a checklist person. So I'm kinda like, well, if I'm doing all the things right, then why is nothing going right? Why am I not seeing the fruits of my labor? And it makes me then want to act out because I was nice. Like, I let that car go in front of me. I'm having a very stressful day and I let them go first and they did not wave. So now I will ram my car into the back of theirs. You see what I'm saying? It's like if I do something right, I want the reward. I want the person to wave at me. Like you said, we want the instant gratification. I don't want to say we. Maybe nobody else feels this way, but like I want the instant gratification. I want like, look at you doing right. Look at you.
Good job, Lori. Good job. You want God to look at you and say, you did a good job today. You did.
One of my little grandsons, he is a buddy of affirmation. Let me tell you, he just will tell you a good job. And when he was probably 3, I had some groceries delivered and he was helping me bring them in. They like sat them on the porch and I had bought some like bell peppers and some zucchini and stuff like that. And as he was taking them out of the bag, he was going, "Good job, Gigi, buying these pumpkins and these long things. I don't know what they are." Good job. And I thought to myself like that, I need to be more like that. He's searching for something to be positive about. So good job.
Well, you saying that, maybe that's some of it, that so used to looking at the negatives, the 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 things that don't go right, that, I don't focus on the positive. So then for when I am on the positive side, and then I
You
don't
should be
know.
commended for
I
that.
should be commended for it, right? I don't know, because I feel like maybe it's me that yet again, okay, I'm doing everything I think is supposed to be right. I'm following the rules of whatever's anybody sets. I'm doing what you tell me I need to do. And I see everybody, or I perceive everybody else gets the accolades, or, good job, or, but then, well, they didn't even put half the work in. But then
Mhm.
is that me being
Well, see,
judgmental,
that
or
that takes me though to this is a huge, is probably a podcast for another day, but this is a huge struggle for me is I am a surface person. I'm always aware of what's happening on the surface. I'm not aware of what's happening underneath. And while
yeah.
I feel like that person has not put in the work, I really don't know what has been going on with that person under the surface. I don't know like the roots that they've dug and the work that they've done, and vice versa. People don't know that about me. You don't know the hours of therapy we have sat in. And I feel convicted of that, but yet I still do it. I want people to see the hard work I'm putting in to heal or to grow closer to Christ. But like you said, I'm judgmental and I don't always recognize that in someone else.
Okay, well, from that statement, don't throw darts at me. But if we have that mentality, which I do the same thing, okay? Are we not being like the religious leaders when Jesus was sitting there in the temple, and they come in and they throw their offering into the big trumpet sitting there, and because they wanted the clean, clean, clean. And then, the widow comes in and gives all she has. Am I trying to
100
be more like the religious leaders of saying, see what I'm doing? I'm going to every Bible study. I'm reading and I get, and like I said, they're not bad things, but maybe it's because they're more outward actions that,
'Cause we don't I see what you're saying. I watched a video recent I don't know anything about nature. I mean, like, I see it, but I don't know how any of it works. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know about gardening and growing and stuff like that, but I watched a video of a tree, and it was like one of the time lapse videos, and so you could see, like, the roots growing, and you could see the tree growing at the same time, and I was shocked at how much work the roots had to do for the tree to grow. Like, the roots were like, you know what I'm saying? Speed. And the tree was like,
yeah,
and I thought, if I would not have been watching that time lapse video, I would have thought, well, that tree's taking forever to grow. There's something wrong. Never realizing everything happening in the dirt.
yeah,
And I think that sometimes what if we're like, what's happening for us is all that in the dirt, but we're looking above ground, wondering why we're not seeing anything. But there is growth happening. We just can't see it in ourselves and
yeah.
others.
Right, right. Which I guess maybe that's because of where I live, and my husband works for a paper making company. So I know how I've absorbed how, like, trees, it takes at least 20 years for a tree to come to maturity before it's
Wow.
harvested and taken to the mill to make paper. It takes that long. And of course, that's just soft wood like a pine, but a hardwood takes a lot longer
So
to.
you're telling me all that growing and all that work in this analogy to become paper that tree had to do, it was really just preparation for what it was intended to be in the end.
In the end, yes. But it took 20 plus years to get there.
So what if we're not being punished in the stuck? What if we're being prepared
Prepared. It's one way to
in
look
the
at it.
stuck?
And the other thing is too, okay, we planted pines out in on our property, mostly because he didn't want to have to bush hog anymore in the pasture, so we planted it in pines, but also to an investment. But when you go around and you look at all these places that the pine trees are planted, you know, you're supposed to, or you need to keep the underbrush cut or burned back, or you have to thin out the trees because I mean, before you know it, you have all kind of little pine trees, and then they're all like this. So, you go in and you're supposed to cut, and thin out. And of course, right now we have a lot of brush in ours, but they come through and they burn. We have controlled burns around here to keep the brush down and the undergrowth down and things from keep it to help the trees grow and stuff. And, me, I just let all the weeds and the pine, the brush and the
Like, I don't like the burning process.
no,
I
I
don't
don't think
I
anybody.
don't I don't like the refinement and when hard things. I don't like that.
And I don't know, maybe it's me, but I guess I always look at the refinement as a negative because it's like punishment to me. Well, you didn't do something right. You didn't follow the rules. You broke a rule somewhere.
I wonder why we always look at that as punishment and not preparation. I mean, I don't think that's just us. I think that's
No, I
everybody.
think that's everybody.
I think it doesn't matter how you grew up or what, you know, class of life you come from. I think that everybody looks at going through a difficult season as what am I doing wrong or what's wrong in my life instead of what's being shaped. Which,
Yeah.
isn't it interesting because I've been married, we recently celebrated our 34th wedding anniversary. We've been together for 35 years. All those arguments and all those hard times and all those sleepless nights created what we have at 34 years. It wasn't always like it is right now, and even though it's great right now, in another 10 years, it'll be even sweeter because that's another 10 years of things that have happened and moments that God has walked us through and heartbreak that we have journeyed through. But it's in the moment, I don't sit there and be like, "This is such a sweet moment. This is gonna make my marriage great, or this is gonna make me such a more humble person." I don't think about it in the moment. I'm like, "This sucks.
Yeah. This is too hard. Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
like this, God. Next."
let's move on to the next level, right?
If I'm looking on social media, Jane Doe over there, she seems to be, having lunch in Italy. She don't seem to be, on fire. And I'm like the little dude from The Incredibles, and my hair's on fire. You know what I'm talking about?
Jack
I'm
Jack,
just
is that
running through like,
okay? And yet again, your statement, and I have to remind myself, and I have to remind my children that, and I have to tell myself this all the time: everything on social media is not true.
true.
I mean, we are perfect on presenting that perfect scenario to give that appearance that everything you know is
Mhm.
perfect, and it's not. It's not. If we're if we're really really truly honest, it's not perfect. I mean, you're not going to see any shots of my house because it is not perfect. But I do see all these perfectly decorated houses, and but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes too. But
You don't.
I'm going to give you a quote from C.S. Lewis. I'm watching Three Circle Church is doing he's doing a sermon series on growth and on the spiritual side of it. And Pastor Bell gave a quote from C.S. Lewis that says, "Change is not growth. Progress is growth." progression toward Christ is spiritual growth. So I think that's probably the bottom line of what we're talking about is when we make change and we're changing, we think that's growth, but it's truly not growth. It's the continuing at it is what the sermon when he was preaching was about. It's the endurance of going forward even when we don't see the change. Does that make sense?
Yes, I was thinking about Paul,
Yeah.
and when Paul was like, I do the things I don't want to do, but I don't do
Mm.
the things I do want to do. And I'm a mess and my hair's on fire and I don't ever get anything right. And I just want to die and like all these things. But I think about, as you were reading that, I was thinking about him and how Paul never gave up. And I think Paul's such an example to us of pursuing and never giving up. But I think that what I get from Paul most of all is I feel like Paul was honest with himself about his shortcomings. I wonder if he was a preacher's kid, because no, he wasn't.
Well, in some ways, I guess you could say, because he was trained up. He was he studied under the
Yeah.
rabbi, of those days, and he knew scripture in and out. As he said, he was a Hebrew of Hebrews,
Yeah. True.
And I guess in a way, he could be quite.
But he was so self-aware of his shortcomings, but not in a negative way that he left for us, okay? I feel like when I read Paul's writings, I always feel like he is saying, hey, this is where I struggle, but this is where you can grow. Like you can learn from where I'm struggling right now. But I had never thought about the spiritual side of things, the spiritual side of growth, because I always feel like if I'm growing, then it's all in one. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I guess
Yeah.
I don't know how to make it make sense, but in my mind, until you said that, I had just always thought, well, as long as I'm growing and moving forward, then I'm also growing and moving forward with Christ. But if that may not always be true.
Be true. Yeah, no, because we always get distracted. Maybe we're getting too distracted by our measuring stick of growth or change,
Because maybe the spiritual growth that we're looking for is in the roots, but we're focused on what is happening above ground so much because
Yeah.
that's what people see. That's what we see, that we're not taking the time to really spend because I mean, where your roots are planted, that it's going to grow from that. You're going to grow from that. My mind is like a hamster on a wheel right now. It's going 100 miles an hour because I've never thought about it like that. I've never had anybody say it like that. And it makes me think my focus has been in the wrong direction, in the wrong place.
Maybe, or could it be like when we're looking at others or even like with our children and stuff? I mean, life is busy. I mean, Satan loves to use distractions, and we can come up with an excuse not to be in the word or attend church or get involved in church or whatever. We can use all kinds of excuses. But are we also doing the same thing of looking at it? Well, if you don't see, like, you're not attending a Bible study or you're not attending church, then you're not growing.
Mm.
Now so many churches have live stream, and I think it's a double-edged sword. I agree. But, well, as long as maybe they're watching online, does that, I don't know. Are we placing the same standard that we're sitting here talking about that, oh, we're doing this and this and this, but I don't see the growth, but what's going on behind the scenes, maybe I don't see them doing it, but I don't know how to put what's going on in my head.
I get what you're saying though. I think that what I'm hearing you say is we're usually either one of two ways. We're either 100% merciless or merciful on ourselves. Okay. But we also extend that to other people too. We're either 100% merciful to other people or we're merciless to them. Because, and it's interesting for me that that scale swings for the rest of the world depending on where that scale is swinging for myself.
Ooh, interesting. That's
So
true.
that's something that I have to keep in mind is where I'm judging you, I'm also struggling within myself. Maybe I feel like you're succeeding and I'm not. And I don't mean succeeding even material wise. I mean just succeeding as a person, as a functioning human, and I'm over here like a puddle. And a lot of times when I'm being merciful to myself and I'm giving myself some grace and mercy, I'm very hard on other people. And I judge other people more because I feel like, well, look at me. I think I said that backwards. Like let me say it this way. If I'm down on myself and I'm like, you're trying so hard and you're just not getting anywhere, bless your heart. That's when I judge other people harder because I'm like, look at her. Look at what she's doing. She's got it together. She's not struggling. Why? And she's struggling. That's what I mean. But
Yeah.
then it's like a lot of times if I have all this compassion for someone else, like she is trying so hard, my heart hurts for her. And I'm like, Laura, you are a mess. You need to get yourself together. Do you see? That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. It's like I'm flip flopped with how I treat other people or how my heart is for other people. And that's frustrating for me because it's an invisible season for myself and for others. And that just shows how twisted my brain is. That just gives y'all an insight to the craziness that happens in my brain. But it's the invisible seasons I think that I'm learning I struggle with the most for myself and for others.
And you're not the only one. I mean, I think we all do. I don't maybe it comes down to we just don't talk about it enough. And we've gone through, there for a while, nobody talked about everything. And then we've gone through this idea, oh, you have to talk about everything and your feelings and everything. And I don't know, maybe it's swinging back, but we just don't, or we're not honest about what's going on. And it might be whoever you're sitting there looking at, and I'm preaching to me too because I do it. That oh, you think they have it all together, and they're like this Christian woman or man just walking so closely with the Lord, which they could very well be. This is where is it Paul that says you go through these things so you can in turn be an encouragement to somebody else in that season. you know, we don't know. They've probably already walked through that. Whatever we're going through, they've already walked through that. But if we don't speak up and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, which I don't do, for them to say, well, yeah, when I was 5 years ago, I was kind of like in a similar situation and this is how God brought me through it. We don't talk, we don't seek out. We just think, oh, well, they've got it all together.
Isn't it funny? You don't see, I don't know, I've never seen a spider judging another spider's web. They're just out there building their own webs. And I think that I agree. I don't think we should air all of our dirty laundry either. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you were like, it's about honesty, honesty with ourselves, and then honesty with God, and then honesty with other people. But it's just hard to be
Yeah.
honest. That kind of vulnerable. I struggle to be that vulnerable before the Lord. I don't even want to
Yeah.
tell God.
No. Well, I mean, me either, because I don't know. It comes back to, oh, you're a preacher's kid. This was always the thing. Well, you're supposed to know. You're supposed to know this. You're supposed to not. You're supposed to have the answer, so therefore, if I don't figure it out, well, I'm not going to, or I'm a mess on something. I don't talk to anybody because I don't want you to know I'm struggling or I don't understand this or, you know, I'm mad about this right now or whatever, and no, I'm not honest with God either. Like, how crazy is that? Like, you don't ever already know, but I'm going to hide that from him, so why?
Well, and I think too, part of our issue is we think that because we can't see a progress, then it's not happening at all. So if I can't go before God and show him this measure of progress I have, then is it really even happening? is it even really true? So if I can't quantify it and hold it and measure up to something, then I'm not really going anywhere anyway. And God's like, honey, you've been going somewhere from the beginning. You're just,
Right.
now I can use it.
Well, I'm reading through the Proverbs 31. They're doing a Bible reading thing through Ezra and Nehemiah, and the prime example is when Nebuchadnezzar came in and destroyed Jerusalem, and the temple was destroyed, and he carried the exiles off to Babylon. And God told them they'd be there for 70 years, but they would return, right? So they had that promise. Well, for 70 years, here they are living a hard life in a land that wasn't their own, thinking, I'm sure they finally just, okay, this is as good as it's going to get. They gave up, not realizing or not standing on that promise. But then behind the scenes, then you have King Cyrus from Persia, I think that's right, who then comes in, takes over Babylon. And it says in scripture that, God put in Cyrus's heart for him to send back some of the Jews and the remnant and Ezra and all them back to rebuild Jerusalem and the temple, and gave them back the stuff that Nebuchadnezzar had taken. So for 70 years, they never knew what was going on behind the scenes. All comes back to what you're saying, what's going on underneath, we don't ever see.
All right, y'all, that's a wrap for today's episode. If something in this conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or just made you feel seen, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them. Send it to a friend, drop it in a group chat, or post it on your story. That kind of support means the world to us. You always find every episode, updates, and more over at therecoveringpreacherskids.com. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We'll see you next time.